podcast for developers by developers, where we discuss technology and trends in industry. I'm your host, Tony Monkolsmai. Over the last year, you've heard me talk to a lot of different startup founders who are all trying to drive into a solution space that's relatively new, mostly around AI. Now, Intel's Liftoff for Startups program has been one of the key forces that Intel has used to try to nurture this environment. Today, I'm joined by Ralph Wargny, who is the director of the Intel Liftoff for Startups program. Welcome to the podcast, Ralph.
Happy to be here, Tony. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. And so Ralph has really created this from scratch and really created kind of this innovation hub, which is really amazing. And we have talked to a lot of the founders who have talked about the technical resources and how your program has helped them. But you guys do more than that. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the various efforts you guys have been doing around the world to help nurture the startup community?
It's very technical, the Liftoff program, but it's not only technical. It's really what we're doing is building a community of founders, innovators, startup CEOs, CTOs. We really want to make this an innovation hub so that people learn from each other, not only from Intel engineers, but also from the experiences and the knowledge of the entire community, right? Everyone helps everyone, helps put people in contact with their network. So this is the network effect we are building around this Liftoff community. So this is one thing. The second thing we are doing outside of the technical engagement is the go-to-market part, right? We want to make these startups that are in our community visible on the market. We want to grow their visibility, grow their network through, first of all, the network of Intel in general, right? Intel is a big company, so we know a lot of people, and these people can be very helpful to those startups to grow, because it's all about growing customers, growing partners, growing investors, and that's where we help on the go-to-market side. We create content together, we build success stories, white papers, you name it, and we promote this through all our channels like social media, but also we go to many events, bring those startups with us, put them in contact with people at the events, and help them really grow their network, grow their revenue in the end. That's what we are doing with the Liftoff program.
Yeah, and I know that you guys have traveled really around the world because you've got people all around the world supporting this program. Just to give developers who are thinking about getting into this program an idea of where you guys go, can you talk a little bit about the different geos where you guys have participated in and kind of showcase the startups we have in our program?
Sure. Basically, we are everywhere because it's virtual. We are a completely virtual program. It's we don't have a fixed location. We have people almost everywhere, so we can help people everywhere. Most of the time, of course, we are really focused on the US, on Europe, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Israel, Northern Europe. So we are in the usual places where you would expect startups. But we are also working closely with African countries, South American countries, and in Mexico. So we have bits and pieces here and there in those countries, and we are happy to work with them because there's a lot of opportunities to create new startups, new innovation for those countries. In general, we are very focused, of course, where the buzz happens, right? Where those founders can be found, and this is mostly the US, Canada, but also Germany, France, the UK, Spain, and Scandinavia. That's where it happens. And Israel, of course, I forgot Israel. A lot of startups in Israel.
Yeah. And how many startups do you guys currently have in the program? I remember, so you just started this, was it April? When was that?
Actually, that was 2 years ago already, right? It did have another name. That's why you probably don't remember. It was called a different name. Now it's called Liftoff. We have this official name about 1.5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And before we didn't have a name. It was just a program. Yeah, it started small. We did our iterations like a startup would do, right? We tried to bring some value to some startups. We saw what worked, what didn't work, and yeah, did kind of some iterations before we found our sweet spot. And at the moment, we handle about 280 startups, all early stage, right? We really focus on early stage. That means right out of the university, often companies that have been part of some accelerator programs at universities, like Berkeley Skydeck or Stanford Launchpad or Munich Unternehmertum. So plenty of those companies that just went through a program at university into our program. We help them grow the product, grow the network. So that's a different kind of program. But we also take a little bit more mature company, like in the pre-seed, seed stage, or even Series A. It depends, right? We don't require any revenue, right? Revenue is not a sign that you are building the great innovation. Maybe it will come in at some point, but you first need to build your product, your service. So that's why we look very closely at what these startups are building before we decide who is coming into our community. And we look at early stage. So as soon as you're a bit more mature, above Series A, we cannot help anymore, because the only interest at that time is really to create more and more revenue, and we can only do such and such. So we focus on these early stage startups.
Yeah. But having 280 startups, I know how big your team is, and it's not all that big. Can you tell us a little bit about the technology you guys are using to make it possible to support that number of startups?
Yeah. So first of all, it's not a constant engagement with every startup at any time. So because it's a membership program, we don't have cohorts. We are not running in batch. So as soon as a company becomes member of our program, they are there for as long as they want. It's not like 12 weeks or 3 months or 1 year. You can stay as often as you want, benefit from different components of the program whenever you want, whenever they want. And at some point, when it goes into really technical engagement, we take more time for certain startups. So if you look at the average per quarter, I would say startups that are really deeply engaged with our team, it's maybe 30, 40 in every quarter for 3 months period, right? During that, we really focus on those 30, 40 startups. And at the other times, startups can use our network, can use our go-to-market facilities, our benefits in terms of connecting them to the rest of Intel and Intel's partners and customers. But we are also using some tools to make our life easier, of course, right? The entire platform is built on Slack. So we have working on Slack. Everyone is connected on Slack. We have office hours. We have designed engineers for the Slack platform. So that works pretty well, right? And we are currently building a portal which will use AI to scale even more, so that we can really reach thousands of startups in the coming years.
Yeah, and speaking of AI, obviously AI is the hot thing in the startup scene right now. As you look across all of the companies that you've worked with in the last year and a half or 2 years, you probably have a good sense of how they are looking at AI and looking at the startup space. Are there any nuggets that you would have for people about what to look for as they start to decide whether or not they think they can build a startup? What are the key things when you know I'm ready to go out and actually try to have a startup?
Yeah, basically there are 3 things, right? This is pretty easy. I mean, the technology is important, but there are 3 things you need to really be careful of. And it's first of all, your team. You have to have a great team. We see often startups that are applying where it's one founder alone. That's not gonna fly. You really need to have a good team, motivated, everyone on top of things, everyone knows what he's talking about, from the CTO to the developer to the CEO to the sales guy. Everyone needs to know what they're talking about. It needs to be a really great, integrated, motivated, enthusiastic team. So this is really, we look at that. It doesn't need to be a huge team, but we really need this enthusiasm, right, and the will to build that startup. The second thing is, of course, technology, right? And at the moment, the possibilities are endless, from LLMs, computer vision, traditional machine learning, whatever. There are really opportunities, amazingly number of opportunities. It's from foundational technology to applications. Application like healthcare, like education. It's crazy, the possibilities at the moment. But we always need to make sure the product or the solution that they are developing is solving a problem, right? Not the other way around, like a problem, a solution in search of a problem, right? We want to solve a problem, a known problem, something that is maybe not obvious, but needs a solution. So that's the second thing. On the technology side, on top, we really like open source technology. So we really favor open source companies that build on open source. So that's really important. At the moment, we really also look at cloud-based services, cloud-native services and products. But more and more, we also engage in local AI, like LLMs, solutions that are running on an AI PC, for instance, right? Because that will have tons of applications in the future. And then the third thing is also, in a minor case for our program, is what is the business model? We get thousands of questions about the business model. Usually when you ask a founder, what's the most important thing right now? It's really all about business model and go to market, right? The technology side is often the easy part. As soon as you have identified a problem, and you have kind of a solution or kind of a product, maybe an MVP, a minimum viable product, the important thing is to get customers. Because if nobody is using what you are building, then that means the problem is not a problem, right? So you need a customer, someone that believes in you, at least an investor that believes in you. But the best proof that your technology is worth something is when you get some customers, and that's most of the time what the questions we get, right, all around. How can we scale to many customers? How can we find the next batch of customers? What can we do to build a better marketing, to build better connections in the market? So this is really the three things that we see are important.
Yeah, and so I always think that the business part is the hardest part. I think for developers, right? Because we tend to think about how can I build a great solution? We build a great solution, and then a lot of times it's challenging to figure out. Maybe you can identify the problem, but how to convince people that their problem is solved by your solution. And I think that is definitely a challenge. So it's good to know that you guys are helping people there. Going back, because I also talk a lot, on the Intel AI podcast, and in the X Spaces about this, which is AI is trended into the cloud, and you mentioned that you're starting to help people figure out potentially how to run LLMs on AI PC or locally, not necessarily even AI PC, but just locally. Do you see a trend there in the startups where they were very cloud heavy, like say a year or two ago, and now they are focused more on local solutions? Or do you think it's just, is it growing kind of evenly? What does that look like from the startups you guys are working with?
I think it's top of mind at many startups, right? Usually you start in the cloud native solution. It's easy. You don't need to invest a lot of money. You pay for what you consume. It's great, right? And at the moment, so much stuff on clouds are available. So many architectures, so many software stacks. It's crazy. It's amazing. But when you go on to the use cases, right? The usage, the actual usage of your AI solution day to day, if each time you need to pay for a lot of consumption on a cloud, that's not gonna fly for a long time. So everyone is looking at how can I move something to my PC, right? If you look at a big company like Adobe and Photoshop, it needs to have both integrated, right? The cloud usage, but also the local usage, and many solutions are built for local as well. It's let's say we're at the beginning. If you look at what's happening on a mobile phone, on a smartphone, you have a lot of AI there. But if you look at PCs, there was not much AI in the past on PCs, and this is coming, right? For heavy workloads that are usually in the cloud, now migrating them to an AI PC is really something that's on top of mind of all the founders, right? This is coming, and even if we're not there yet, next 2-3 years it's coming.
Do you think is that a cost thing? You mentioned that cloud is cheaper to get into. Is it a cost driver, or is it an experience driver, or is it? I guess it's probably a combination of both. Do you feel like one is more relevant than the other for startups?
It's a combination of both. There is cost aspect, but usually cloud is cheap. There is the connectivity aspect. Do I need to be all the time connected with a high bandwidth connection? If you look at healthcare, look at your doctors, emergency, they have laptops, they have systems, right? They need AI. If the connectivity is down in an emergency case, what do they do, right? This is so. This is really there are really great use cases and reasons to use an AI PC locally. There are reasons, and it can be time lag, right? Time delay to get to a solution or a response from the AI. It can be a cost, experience. It's a big mix of everything, I would say, right? And if you look at most of the people in the world, if you want to give AI to most of the people, to doctors in Africa, in Asia, in places where the connectivity is not that big or where the resources are limited, and that could be in Europe or the US as well, right? It's not everywhere you have the best connectivity. You maybe have better connectivity in Africa than in Europe sometimes. So if you build AI solutions for healthcare, it's ideal to have it locally. Ideal, even if it only covers 90 or 80% of the cases, it's ideal, right? You save money, time. You have a great user experience. You don't need to wait for some results. It's really the way it should go in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see, I'm going to pivot a little bit because I always ask my guests the last question. And so I'm going to end on that, even though it would fit right here. Sorry, listeners, but I'm going to pivot a little bit because we do have Intel Innovation coming up in San Jose, which is one of the places where you're going to be able to find the Intel Liftoff for Startups people and engage with them. And that is September 24th and 25th in the San Jose Convention Center in San Jose, California. And Ralph, I know you guys are going to be there. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your presence will be like? So if people listening are interested in going to chat with your team and other startups there that you guys are working with, what's that going to look like? What's the logistics of those startups being there going to be like?
So happy to meet a lot of new startups at the event, at the conference. You're all invited. If you're a founder, recent founder or future founder, you are invited to join us there. First of all, to meet a lot of our startups from the program. Can name a few like Prediction Guard, Ultralytics, You name them. I just don't have them on top of my head right now. But you will have the opportunity to meet a lot of those startups, talk with them, network. Plus, we have scheduled a few sessions that we think are beneficial for startups, early stage startups, of course, and future founders. So we'll have some workshops about how to build an AI startup, right? The phases we talked about, the team building, the technology building, the go-to-market. We'll cover all these things. Then how to scale a startup solution from the cloud on the cloud to thousands of users. So how to scale at lowest cost. So we will cover that in a special session. And we have several sessions where we will cover this local aspect, which we discussed, right? How to build a solution in the cloud and bring it to a local device like an AI PC. So this is all those sessions are targeted at startup developers, and we'll be happy to host all of you.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that's really important to highlight. As I've been working on this innovation planning a lot for the last, I'll say, month, and I think that this year we have, I don't want to say a track because it's not a dedicated track, but we logically have a track for people who are thinking about becoming a startup founder. And Ralph's team is going to be there with all of their experience to highlight, like he said, all of those steps on the way. It's not just a session where you're going to come and hear about somebody's solution. You're going to come and learn how to be a startup founder. And to me, that's so exciting because I know that means that the people that are there are looking to be innovators. So really great. I'm really glad we were able to push that through and make sure we've got that type of track for people to come in and learn. I'm always excited to learn from you guys. So it's really fantastic. So that was our marketing ad. I hope you guys are interested in innovation, but I'm going to pivot back. And again, I'm sorry, listeners, because I took a left turn. But Ralph, when you are looking at what is coming down the pipeline from these startups, you were talking about medical, you were talking about local LMs and things where being local matters. Yeah, where location matters, but I'm curious, as you were talking about that, my first thought was, what is the place where you are most excited about the startups that you're working with making a difference? So for me, I tend to, I'll say, tweet, reshare, whatever, a lot of things about medical because my parents are medical doctors. So I have a lot of interest in that space. And I think that it makes a big difference to people's lives. If we can do something with AI in there, that makes a difference to somebody's life in a very concrete way. Is there a space that you get super excited about when you work with all these startups?
So there are two things where I really am excited. First is medical, the same as you just said, healthcare, right? So much can be done with technology, with AI. So much pattern recognition is one of the biggest things that is coming. LLMs. So this is the space where I think there's the most opportunities, right? To scale it to the entire planet. Solutions that scale to the entire planet using all this foundational technology that's available to us. This is a great place. And education technology. So imagine if you could build a startup. I mean, I know some that build Chat GPT for schools, for every schools in the world, for every student in the world that can have his own private teacher in form of an LLM, right? And multimodal LLM with sound, he can talk to the LLM, he can draw images. So everyone can have this. If a student doesn't understand something, he can ask. And this is a great place to be. So anything around healthcare and education, I think these are the places where startups can make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, and again, plugging innovation since it's coming up. You guys, I think Raul, who we've had on our podcast many times, brought us the talk from Christoph, which is going to be highlighted at Innovation as well. And I'm going to link his TED Talk because he does a great justice to why AI in education can make a difference. I'll give you guys the short version, but recommend you go listen to his TED Talk, which is that everybody learns differently. LLMs have the capability to treat everybody differently. And that's where personalization matters, because you can actually help students who learn a different way become productive, and not in the you have to follow everybody else's rules way, but everybody learns differently. Let's try to encourage everybody to be the best that they can be. And AI and LLMs really provide an opportunity in that space. And I will, again, link Christoph's talk there. If you want to come hear it, that will be at Innovation. He'll talk about what progress they've made there. But again, AI for good, education, medical, it's a fantastic space where we can really personalize things for the world.
Exactly. Yeah, and I know
right.
Christoph, and his talk is amazing.
Yeah, it's very inspiring. It
very
is
inspiring.
Yeah, it's a great thing when we can actually take technology and make it very concrete for not just a small subset of people, but really potentially for everybody. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that talk.
Great,
All right.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Any last thoughts, Ralph? Or I think we covered a lot of stuff.
Last thoughts. We are waiting for your application. Contact us, Intel Liftoff. Just Google it. You'll find it. You can contact us directly. Like said in the beginning, it's free. It's not pay. You don't pay. We don't invest in your company. We just want to make a win-win situation between you, your startup, and Intel. And that's going to be great. We look forward to your application. Come over and let's have a chat. Let's change the world.
Yeah. Ralph Wargny,
Right.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tony.
All right. And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in on YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll talk to you next time when we talk more technology and trends in industry.